Waking up after 3 weeks in a coma should have been the best day of my life. Instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare I never saw coming. The sterile hospital room felt eerily quiet, and something was wrong. No flowers, no cards, no family waiting by my bedside. When I asked the nurse about visitors, she gave me the strangest look and said, "Your brother told us there was no insurance, no family support. We thought no one was coming to claim you." My heart sank as I tried calling my family, but every number went straight to disconnection messages. That's when I knew something terrible had happened while I was unconscious. Before I tell you what I discovered next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and please hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. You will not believe what my own family did while they thought I was gone forever. My name is Hope, and 6 months before my accident, my world had already started cracking. When my grandmother Margaret passed away, she left behind her beautiful Victorian house in Denver, worth $800,000 and $200,000 in cash. The inheritance was split equally between me, my older brother Marcus, and my younger sister Skylar. Marcus, 35 years old, had been struggling with failed real estate investments for years. Every business venture he touched seemed to crumble, leaving him desperate for money. Skylar, 28, had racked up massive credit card debts from her shopping addiction. Designer handbags, expensive clothes, luxury vacations she could not afford. Both of them wanted to sell grandmother's house immediately and split the cash. I was different. At 32, I worked as an elementary school teacher and lived simply. That house meant everything to me. It was where grandmother had raised me during summers, where she taught me to bake cookies and told stories about our family history. I could not bear the thought of strangers living there, so I moved in alone to maintain the property while we figured things out. The tension between us grew thicker every week. Marcus would call me selfish for holding up the sale. Skylar would cry about her mounting debts and blame me for her financial problems. Family dinners became war zones where they tag-teamed against me, trying to pressure me into agreeing to sell. But I stood firm. That house was our heritage, not just money to be divided. On that fateful Friday evening in October, I was driving home from a parent-teacher conference when everything changed. The intersection of Colfax and Broadway was busy as always, but I had a green light. That is when a massive delivery truck ran the red light at full speed and slammed directly into the driver's side of my sedan. The impact was devastating. My car spun 3 times before crashing into a light pole. Glass shattered everywhere, and I felt my head strike the window with tremendous force. The last thing I remember was the sound of sirens growing louder and a paramedic's voice saying, "We need to get her to Denver General immediately." The doctors later told me I suffered severe traumatic brain injury. My skull was fractured in 2 places, and there was significant swelling in my brain. They performed emergency surgery and put me in a medically induced coma to reduce the pressure. The medical team listed Marcus as my emergency contact since he was my closest living relative. According to hospital records, Marcus visited twice during my first week. He spoke with Dr. Anderson about my condition and was told that my chances of survival were extremely low. The brain swelling was not responding to treatment, and if I did survive, there could be permanent cognitive damage. Dr. Anderson emphasized that recovery would be a long process, requiring extensive rehabilitation and family support. That was the last time Marcus showed up at the hospital. For the remaining 2 weeks of my coma, no family members came to visit. The nurses assumed I had been abandoned. Jennifer, my primary nurse, later told me she felt sorry for me because I was completely alone during those critical weeks when family support could have made all the difference in my recovery. When I finally woke up, the confusion was overwhelming. My head throbbed with every heartbeat, and I struggled to remember basic details about my life. Jennifer was amazed to see me conscious and coherent. She immediately called Dr. Anderson, who rushed in to examine me. "This is remarkable," he said, checking my reflexes and cognitive responses. "Your brother was told the prognosis was essentially hopeless. We expected you to remain in a vegetative state if you survived at all." I tried calling Marcus first. His phone number had been disconnected. Then I called Skylar. Same thing. A recording said the number was no longer in service. Panic started setting in as I realized something was seriously wrong. Next, I called Lincoln Elementary School, where I had worked for 8 years. When I spoke to the secretary, Mrs. Rodriguez, her voice became very quiet. "Hope, but we were told about your passing. Principal Thompson filled your position 2 weeks ago. There was even a memorial service for you in the faculty lounge." My hands trembled as I hung up the phone. This made no sense. Why would everyone think I was dead when I was lying right here in a hospital bed? Dr. Anderson was puzzled too. He checked his records and confirmed that Marcus had been updated about my condition regularly. "Your brother knew you were alive. I spoke with him personally about your treatment options and potential for recovery. Since I had no insurance verification and no family to guarantee payment, the hospital was eager to discharge me. Doctor." Lawrence, the attending physician, took pity on my situation and allowed me to leave with a payment plan agreement. The charity organization provided me with donated clothes, an oversized sweater, worn jeans, and sneakers that did not quite fit. Taking the city bus back to grandmother's neighborhood felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but something fundamental had shifted in my world. As we approached the familiar tree-lined street, my stomach churned with anxiety about what I might find when I got home. Standing in front of grandmother's house, I immediately knew something was terribly wrong. The spare key I had hidden under the ceramic frog was gone, and when I tried my house key, it did not fit. Someone had changed all the locks. Pressing my face against the living room window, I peered inside and gasped. The house was completely empty. Gone was grandmother's antique furniture, her china cabinet filled with delicate teacups, the Persian rugs she had collected over decades. Even the family photos that lined the mantelpiece had vanished. It looked like no one had ever lived there. "Oh, my Lord, you are supposed to be dead." I spun around to see Mrs. Patterson, our 72-year-old neighbor, standing on her front porch with her hand clutched to her chest. Her face had turned completely white, and she was staring at me like she had seen a ghost. "Mrs. Patterson, it is me, Hope. I was in an accident, but I am fine now." She shook her head vigorously, backing away from me. "No, no, no. This cannot be right. Marcus and Skylar told everyone you died in the hospital. They cleaned out the house 2 weeks ago. There were moving trucks here for 3 days straight." My legs felt weak as her words sank in. They said I was dead. "There was a funeral service and everything at Riverside Chapel on October 15th. I attended myself and brought a casserole for the reception afterward. Marcus gave such a beautiful speech about losing his beloved sister." The world started spinning around me. A funeral. They held a funeral for me. Mrs. Patterson nodded sadly. "The whole neighborhood came to pay respects. Marcus said you were in a terrible accident and that the injuries were so severe they had to have a closed casket service. Skylar cried through the entire ceremony." I stumbled backward, trying to process this information. My own brother and sister had not just abandoned me in the hospital. They had actively told people I was dead and held a funeral service while I was fighting for my life. "Where did they go?" I managed to ask. "Marcus bought some fancy condominium downtown with the money from selling this place. Said you would have wanted them to use the inheritance to start fresh after such a tragedy." With shaking hands, I walked to Riverside Chapel, the funeral home Mrs. Patterson had mentioned. Mr. Rodriguez, the funeral director, confirmed everything with disturbing detail. "Yes, the service for Hope Williams on October 15th. Your brother Marcus handled all arrangements and paid in full. 67 people attended. Very nice turnout for such a tragic loss." He showed me the funeral registry book. Page after page of signatures from neighbors, former co-workers, family, friends. People had written heartfelt messages about my beautiful spirit and how I would be deeply missed. Reading these condolences while standing there alive was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. The family requested a closed casket due to the severity of injuries from the car accident, Mr. Rodriguez explained. Your brother was very specific about that detail. "What was in the casket?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. just weighted materials to simulate. Well, to make the service feel authentic for the mourners. Your brother said it would help with the grieving process. Marcus had literally buried an empty coffin while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed 20 minutes away. My next stop was First National Bank, where grandmother's inheritance accounts were held. The manager, Sarah Chen, pulled up my records and frowned at her computer screen. "I am sorry, but this account was closed 3 weeks ago due to a death certificate being filed. The beneficiary, Marcus Williams, withdrew the full balance of $200,000. "But I am not dead," I said, showing her my driver's license. Sarah stared at my identification, then back at her computer. "This is very unusual. Let me pull the death certificate we have on file." The document she showed me was an official-looking death certificate with my name, birth date, and cause of death listed as traumatic brain injury resulting from motor vehicle accident. It was signed by Dr. Robert Thompson from Denver General Hospital. "There is no Dr. Robert Thompson at Denver General," I told her. "I was treated by Dr. Anderson." Sarah's expression grew serious as she realized what had happened. "This appears to be a fraudulent document. We will need to contact the police and freeze any related transactions immediately." But the damage was already done. Marcus had used the fake death certificate to withdraw every penny of my inheritance. The money that was supposed to help me recover from my accident had been stolen by the brother I trusted most. I spent the rest of that day at the public library searching online for more evidence of my supposed death. There it was in the Denver Post obituaries. Hope Williams' beloved teacher and community member passed away October 12th from injuries sustained in a traffic accident. She is survived by her brother Marcus Williams and sister Skylar Williams. The accompanying article included quotes from Marcus about what a wonderful person I was and how the family was devastated by this unexpected loss. There was even a photo of him and Skylar at the funeral, both dressed in black and looking appropriately grief-stricken. But the most chilling detail was in the final paragraph. "In lieu of flowers, the family asks that donations be made to the Brain Injury Association of Colorado, as Hope would have wanted her death to help others facing similar challenges." They had turned my fake death into a charity fundraising opportunity. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. I found Marcus's new address through the real estate listings online. He had purchased a luxury penthouse condominium in Cherry Creek, one of Denver's most expensive neighborhoods. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place he had always dreamed of living, but never could afford on his sporadic income. Standing outside the impressive building, I could see him through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 23rd floor unit. He was sitting on a leather couch that probably cost more than my annual teaching salary, talking on his phone and gesturing animatedly. Even from this distance, I could tell he looked relaxed and happy. Skylar was there too, sprawled across an expensive-looking chair with shopping bags scattered around her feet. I could make out the distinctive red soles of Christian Louboutin shoes and what appeared to be several designer handbags. She was living the life she had always wanted, funded by my supposedly tragic death. Taking the elevator to the 23rd floor felt like ascending to my own execution. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I reached their door, I stood there for several minutes, gathering the courage to ring the doorbell. The sound of footsteps approached from inside. Then the door swung open and Marcus's face went through a series of expressions I will never forget. First confusion, then shock, then absolute terror. "This cannot be real," he whispered, gripping the doorframe for support. "You are dead. We buried you. I saw your body at the hospital." "No, you did not," I said calmly, though inside I was screaming. "You saw me in a coma and decided it would be more profitable if I stayed that way permanently." Skylar's voice came from behind him. "Who is at the door, Marcus?" When she appeared and saw me, she let out a shriek that echoed through the hallway. "Hope, oh my God, we thought—" "The doctors said—" "Cut the act," I interrupted, pushing past Marcus into their luxurious apartment. "I know everything. The fake death certificate, the funeral, the money, all of it." The apartment was a showcase of expensive taste. Marble countertops, designer, furniture, artwork that cost more than most people's cars. Everything had been purchased with the money they stole from me while I fought for my life in a hospital bed. Marcus quickly recovered from his initial shock and his expression hardened. "You do not understand the situation. We had medical bills to pay, debts to handle. The doctors said you were brain dead with no chance of recovery." "That is a lie," I shot back. "Dr. Anderson told me he spoke with you about treatment options and rehabilitation plans. You knew I had a chance." Skylar started crying crocodile tears. "The doctors said you would never wake up. We were just trying to protect grandmother's legacy from being wasted on medical bills." Protect it or steal it. You never even came back to the hospital to check if I was getting better. Marcus's face twisted with anger. "We thought we were doing the right thing. You were supposed to die hope. The doctors gave you zero chance of survival." The casual way he said I was supposed to die hit me like a physical blow. This was my brother, the person who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework when we were children. Now he was angry that I had survived. Family does not mean anything when money is involved. Marcus continued pacing around the expensive living room. "Grandmother spoiled you, left you the biggest emotional attachment to that house. Skylar and I needed the inheritance more than you did." "We can fix this," Skylar interjected desperately. "We can share the money properly now that you are back." I stared at both of them in disbelief. "Fix this? You held my funeral. You mourned me in front of our entire community while stealing every penny I had. You let my employer replace me, closed my bank account, sold my home. You erased me from existence." "We did not think you would wake up," Marcus said defensively. "And when you did not come looking for us right away, we figured maybe it was better this way." That final statement broke something inside me. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my identity, my relationships, my entire life. And even now, faced with the evidence of their betrayal, they were trying to justify it. "You are my family," I screamed, finally losing control. "I trusted you with everything. When grandmother died, I was the one who organized her funeral. I was the one who took care of her house. I was the one who made sure her memory was honored. And this is how you repay that trust." Marcus's face showed no remorse. "Trust does not pay bills. We were drowning in debt while you lived comfortably in that house playing teacher and pretending to be the perfect granddaughter." "We can work this out," Skylar pleaded again. "We still have most of the money. We can split everything fairly." But I realized in that moment that there was no going back. These people were not my family anymore. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA. They had literally wished for my death and profited from it. "You held my funeral." I repeated quietly, the full weight of their betrayal settling over me. "You stood in front of everyone we know and cried fake tears while planning how to spend my inheritance. You are not sorry that you did it. You are sorry that you got caught." The silence that followed was deafening, because in that silence, we all knew I was absolutely right. Walking out of that apartment, I felt like I was emerging from a tomb. But instead of feeling defeated, something fierce and determined was growing inside me. They had tried to bury me, but they had no idea how strong I actually was. My first call was to Elizabeth Hartman, an attorney who specialized in estate fraud and family financial abuse. When I explained my situation, there was a long pause on the phone. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," she said slowly. "Your family filed a fake death certificate, held a funeral service, and used fraudulent documents to steal your inheritance while you were unconscious in the hospital. That is exactly what happened." This is one of the most egregious cases of identity theft and fraud I have encountered in 20 years of practice. We have grounds for both criminal charges and civil litigation. Elizabeth worked quickly to gather evidence. The The fake death certificate with the non-existent doctor's signature, the bank records showing fraudulent withdrawals, the funeral home documentation, and witness statements from Mrs. Patterson and hospital staff all painted a clear picture of deliberate criminal activity. Within 2 weeks, she had filed a comprehensive lawsuit seeking the return of all stolen assets, plus additional damages for emotional distress and punitive penalties. The case was so straightforward that Marcus and Skylar's attorney advised them to settle rather than face the certainty of criminal prosecution. The legal proceedings took 6 months to complete, but justice was swift and thorough. Marcus was ordered to return the full $200,000, plus an additional $100,000 in punitive damages. The court also ruled that the house sale was invalid due to fraud, and the new owners were forced to sell it back to me at the original purchase price. Marcus received 18 months in federal prison for identity theft and financial fraud. Skylar got 12 months of supervised probation and community service, though she had to declare bankruptcy to pay her portion of the restitution. But the legal victory was only part of my healing process. The deeper work was learning to rebuild my life from the ground up. I started seeing Dr. Amanda Foster, a psychologist who specialized in family trauma and betrayal. Through our sessions, I began to understand that what happened to me was not just theft, but a profound violation of trust that would take time to process and overcome. Your family essentially tried to erase your existence, Dr. Foster explained during one of our early sessions. The trauma of that betrayal runs much deeper than financial loss. They attacked your very right to exist. She was right. For months after the legal proceedings ended, I struggled with anxiety and depression. I would wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I was really alive or if this was all some elaborate hallucination. The fact that my own family had been willing to profit from my death shook my fundamental beliefs about human nature and unconditional love. But slowly, with professional help and the support of genuine friends, I began to heal. I joined a support group called Family Betrayal Survivors, where I met other people who had experienced similar violations from their relatives. There was something incredibly powerful about sharing my story with others who truly understood the unique pain of family betrayal. Through this group, I met incredible people who became my chosen family. Sarah, whose brother had stolen her inheritance after their mother's death. David, whose sister had emptied his accounts while he was deployed overseas. Maria, whose parents had committed credit fraud using her identity. We all carried similar wounds, but together we found strength and healing. I also returned to Lincoln Elementary School, where my colleagues welcomed me back with overwhelming support. Principal Thompson had kept my position open after learning the truth about my supposed death, and my students created a massive welcome back banner that brought tears to my eyes. The house became a sanctuary again, but now it meant something different. Instead of just preserving grandmother's memory, I transformed it into something that would help others. I established a nonprofit organization that provides temporary housing and legal assistance for people who have been financially abused by family members. It was through this work that I met James, a volunteer attorney who helped our organization with complex cases. He was kind, patient, and understood my trust issues without taking them personally. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, built on genuine respect and shared values rather than family obligation or financial dependency. A year after my resurrection, I was stronger and happier than I had ever been. I learned that family is not determined by blood relationships, but by the people who show up for you consistently with love and support. My chosen family of friends, colleagues, and fellow survivors provided more genuine care than my biological relatives ever had. The most important lesson I learned was about forgiveness, but not in the way most people expect. I did not forgive Marcus and Skylar for their sake. They showed no real remorse and continued to justify their actions throughout the legal proceedings. Instead, I forgave them for my own sake to release the anger and resentment that was poisoning my ability to move forward. True forgiveness, I discovered, is not about excusing someone's behavior or welcoming them back into your life. It is about freeing yourself from the emotional chains that bind you to past trauma. I forgave them and then chose to build a life where their opinions, their presence, and their dysfunction had no power over me. Sometimes people ask me if I miss having a real family, and the question always makes me smile. I have a real family now. They are the people who celebrated when I woke up from my coma, who helped me rebuild my life, who support my dreams and challenge me to grow. They are the people who would never dream of profiting from my pain. They buried me once thinking they could erase me from existence and profit from my disappearance. But I was the one who chose to stay dead to them forever. And that choice set me free. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a double life behind your back? How did you find the strength to rebuild after such a betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below because your story might help someone else who is facing a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming impossible odds. And do not forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear that survival and healing are always possible, even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most painful endings become the most beautiful new beginnings.